Hi, I'm Rev Myron. I'm a minister through Pathways of Light, and I've been a Course in Miracles student for 40 years. I'm going through the lessons this year, asking Jesus to clarify for me, and then I write from that clarity, and that's what I'm sharing with you today. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll look at lesson 362. This holy instant would I give to you. Be you in charge, for I would follow you, certain that your direction gives me peace. And if I need a word to help me, he will give it to me. If I need a thought, that will he also give. And if I need but stillness and a tranquil, open mind, these are the gifts I will receive of him. He is in charge by my request, and he will hear and answer me because he speaks for God, my Father, and his Holy Son. And of course, these last several lessons are the same lesson. So I'm just going to look at it each day and we'll see what comes up. So today, I looked at that first sentence, this holy instant would I give to you. And which holy instant is he talking about? It can be any moment or every moment. It's up to us. It is the moment we forgive the past and stay in the present. Moreover, it is a moment in which we embrace our brothers in forgiveness, love, and gratitude. It is a moment in which we trade a miracle for a grievance. It is possible to live in the holy instant if we continue to choose God rather than ego. And be you in charge. If I choose for the Holy Spirit to be in charge of my days and my nights, I will be peaceful and happy. I know this is true because I usually do that. If I veer from that path, I notice because I lose my peace. I ask him to be in charge of all I do, of all I think, and of all I say. There's nothing I need the ego's advice on, so there's nothing I would do without the Holy Spirit. For I would follow you, certain that your direction gives me peace. I know from long experience that following the Holy Spirit's directions gives me peace. On the other hand, following the ego's directions always leads to conflict and therefore unhappiness. I started out putting the day in his hands and everything went smoothly. I was doing work I don't particularly like, but I didn't have that experience. Instead, I was enjoying my day. Suddenly, I noticed that things were not going as smoothly as they had been. I wasn't getting as much done because I wasn't feeling guided. Since the Holy Spirit never leaves my request unanswered, I knew that I must have started making my decisions with the ego. I stopped and waited until I felt guided, and now I'm back on track. I'm happy and peaceful, whatever I'm doing, when I do it with the Holy Spirit in charge. This is the way to live. So let's look at what Regina had to say. The introduction to the final essay says, his is the only way to find the peace of God, the peace that God has given us. It is his ending to the dream we seek and not our own. As you contemplate the final lesson throughout the day-to-day, it is also helpful to contemplate this excerpt from the introduction. We seek his ending and not our own. Recently, I read The Final Understanding by Floyd Henderson. In that book, he wrote, so many take their favorite teaching method and its teachings as the final step, adopting a religious or spiritual persona and fixating in that role for the remainder of the manifestation, doing spiritual stuff, eating spiritual stuff, and wearing spiritual stuff, and all of their spiritual doingness, living in what they take to be a most non-natural, supernatural, elevated, higher, and yes, separate and different manner. In other words, ego can play the spiritual game. It can believe the teachings and imagine itself living them. The ego gets a sense of satisfaction out of being the spiritual one. However, we aren't seeking a new game for the ego to play. We do not seek an elevated spiritual persona or even an elevated spiritual community. We seek his ending and not our own. Let humility be the name of our game. We are students until the very end, even if we happen to be placed in a teaching role. So my thoughts about this. I said that tricky spiritual ego can sidetrack us if we're not careful. This is why my spiritual work is focused on purification. I never try to change my behavior, only my mind. Once the mind is changed, the behavior follows without effort. Here's an example. Jesus talks about using magic, such as medicine, for physical ailments when they are not physical at all, but rather they are manifestations of false beliefs. I see that this is true and I accept it fully. This does not mean I will stop taking medicine in order to live without using magic. What it means is that I will continue to purify my mind of any desire to defend against God and to release the belief in guilt. When the mind is healed, there will likely be no need for magic. I don't act like I'm holy. I purify my mind of all that is not holy. I don't act as if I am loving and kind. I purify my mind of all that is not love. I know that behavior, no matter how perfectly mimicked, is not the same as a healed mind. Now, here's an idea I do use at times that has been helpful. If I'm uncertain how to respond in a situation, I ask myself, what would I do if my mind were perfectly healed? And then I do that. But in doing this, I'm not kidding myself or anyone else. I'm not pretending. I am simply practicing in the purest way I know how. So here's a past entry. I want to set aside the idea that I have goals that are special and different than my brothers, and realize that we all have the same purpose because we are all the same. And Holy Spirit said, Myron, think of life in this way. Imagine a quilt whose pattern is very complex. If you look at only a small part of it, there seems to be no real pattern. It's a crazy quilt. But as you step back from it, you see that there seems to be a pattern emerging. And the further you step back, the more the pattern begins to make sense. Now come back up close and look at only the small piece that seems to be yours. From this point of view, you can see very little other than the little bit that you're creating. You cannot see how it relates to anyone else's piece. You have glimpses of connections, but even these connections are not clear. How does your piece affect someone else's piece? From where you stand, it's very hard to know. Because you cannot know the whole quilt, you cannot judge the piece you work on. It might seem that you made a misstep, but that's because you do not know how that step affects the whole. It is not helpful for you to judge your steps because it is utterly impossible for you to do so. It is essential that you complete your piece of the quilt to be wholly done, but no matter how perfectly your piece is prepared, it is never the whole quilt. It will never stand alone. Your piece is unique within the quilt, but serves the same purpose as every other piece. Does that make sense to you? And I said, yes, Holy Spirit, it's remarkably clear. Thank you. And thank all of you for being here with me today as I do this lesson. If you found it helpful, then please like it. And if you haven't yet, then please subscribe. And I'll be back tomorrow and we will do this lesson again and see what comes up this time. So see you then.